Hey there. Welcome back to Communicate to Lead. Before we get into today's episode, I have a quick note for you. I'm bringing back a conversation that's been on my mind a lot lately. My discussion with Lenetr King on the power of advocates, mentors, and sponsors in your career. If you've been listening this year, you know we've been talking a great deal about sponsorship and why it matters so much for women who are doing excellent work and still being overlooked. That topic struck a chord with so many of you. And this conversation with Lenetr goes even deeper. She breaks down the real difference between a mentor, an advocate, and a sponsor, and why understanding that difference can change the entire trajectory of your career. Here's what makes this one worth your time. Most of us were taught to seek mentors, someone to give us advice. Far fewer of us were taught to build sponsors, the people who advocate for us in the rooms where we are not in. Lenetr makes that distinction very clear and so practical, and she shows you how to cultivate those relationships with intention. So whether you are early in building your network of champions or you're ready to be more strategic about it, this conversation will give you a new way to think about who is in your corner. Let's get into my conversation with Lenetr King. Welcome to Communicate to Lead, the podcast that empowers leaders and aspiring leaders to communicate with clarity and impact. I'm Keely Belton, CEO and successful entrepreneur, and your host for today. I'm here to equip you with all the essential tools and strategies to master effective communication and lead your team to success. As the founder and CEO of The Tailored Approach, my goal is to empower you to be the best leader you can be. So sit back, relax, and join me in today's episode as we dive into the art of communicating like a true leader. My guest today is Lenetr King. Lenetr is the founder of Watch Me Excel, a pioneering leadership development firm that provides executive coaching, consulting, and other services to hospitals, healthcare companies, higher education institutions, and associations. After more than 15 years as a healthcare C-suite executive, where she led significant culture and operational turnarounds, as well as, listen to this, multi-million-dollar revenue and expense initiatives in hospitals around the country. She used her expertise to create Lead Amplify Excel, a proprietary framework that helps leaders amplify their personal brand and maximize their leadership performance. Lenetr is all that and a sought-after speaker who is frequently asked to share her thoughts, the thought leadership on topics relevant to the career success of women and professionals from underrepresented populations. What an important topic. She's also the author of Unwritten Insights, a career playbook for leaders of color. Lenetr, welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much. It's great to see you. And definitely very appreciative of the opportunity to be here.
Thank you. It's been, we struggled to find our sync there, but I'm so glad we were able to align our calendars because I know you have done some incredible things in your career. And I know with Watch Me Excel, you taking it to the next level, you are coaching leaders, you are helping inspire them. So I'm so grateful that you were able to take the time and join us here today.
Absolutely. Grateful to be here. So thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm going to kick us right off with the first question. Tell us more about yourself and what inspired you to leave your corporate position. I mean, after 15 years of getting up there and to kickstart your business, Watch Me Excel.
Yeah, so I'll just start out sharing a little bit about my background. So as you shared, I spent the last 15 years of my corporate career as a C-suite leader. I'm in hospitals around the country. So I spent my entire virtually career in the healthcare industry and was so blessed to be able to work with amazing teams, being an executive leader, and just doing all the things that I really was passionate about. So I went to graduate school. I have an MBA as well as a Master of Science in Health Administration. So healthcare has been a passion of mine, and I wanted to be a leader for some time. And honestly, I've had so many great opportunities to work in various communities, advancing things that were passions of mine, like health equity and making sure that communities got the care that they deserved. And one of the things that I loved while I was working was coaching and growing leaders and really helping leaders figure out, how do I be the best leader that I can be? How can I be more transformational, build trust, build teams, build highly engaged employees, and just do all the things that I need to do to drive results for the organization. So I took one of those things that I really loved, which was growing leaders, coaching leaders, and really helping people figure out, what's my sauce. And I launched this company. And particularly what was so important for me in terms of this company was I wanted to have something that was my legacy. And when I talk about my legacy, it was really, as I think about this part of my life, I wanted something where, my son and future generations of my family would know that, my name mattered and that my life existed for something. And as I thought about those things and how I could truly leave a legacy, yes, I had a great career, but I figured, not a whole lot of people would probably remember me by these fancy titles and by the money that I made. And something where I could really put my stamp on it and create something that I was proud of. And that was how my company came about. You asked me, why did I leave? So in the summer of 2020, as the world was experiencing social and civil unrest, I started really thinking about this next chapter in my own legacy. So that was when I launched my company, which is a leadership development firm, while I was still working full time.
Wow.
And I started praying fervently just about, I'm a strong person of faith. And I had just started praying fervently that I would get some direction and clarity about, what is this legacy? What is it next? And what do you want to do? And how could you help future generations with some of the things that you may have even struggled with? So as I was thinking about some of those things, what came to me was just tapping into the things that I love to do, which was grow coaching leaders. And that was how my company was launched, summer of 2020. Again, while I was still working. And that following summer, the organization that I was with at the time was going through some significant reorganization and realignment. And my division and my position were impacted. So I had the opportunity to walk away from corporate at that point, once my position was impacted. And I just made the decision that I wasn't going to go back to corporate and I wanted to pursue some other things. And fortunately for me, I already had this business and was kind of teetering around, want to be a full-time entrepreneur or do I want to get back into corporate? And also, you mentioned my book. I started writing my book before I left corporate. So leaving corporate really gave me the opportunity to pursue all of the things that I wanted to do, which was be an entrepreneur, run my own company, have more time with my family. I really have more control of my destiny, if you will. My book, focus on a couple of other passions that I had, and do that with some flexibility. So that's where we are today.
Oh, fantastic. So many wonderful things you shared, and we'll dive a little deeper into some of the things you mentioned. I mean, thank you for starting your business, because that's what we need. We need more leaders saying, hey, I'm ready for my next chapter. I'm ready to grow the next group of leaders and watch them excel.
Absolutely. Now, it's not easy.
No.
It's not as easy as people make it seem on the internet. I'll say that.
Blood, sweat, and tears. That's often what I say when people ask, how does it feel to be an entrepreneur? It's like, it's inspiring. It is fun. It is terrifying. It's blood, sweat, and tears all the time. So
it's all the feels. It's all the feels.
Without a doubt. So I can absolutely relate to what you're saying. In your experience, what are some common communication challenges leaders are facing, and how can they overcome them?
So I think a couple of things as I think about communication challenges. One, I think sometimes leaders, people in general, are so quick to speak, to give information, to give resources without truly thinking about the audience, truly thinking about what does the audience need to hear from this message in order to get them on board or in order for them to truly listen and digest the information that they're being given. Because so many of us, we just talk just to talk. Right? So one of the opportunities I feel like that we have, particularly as leaders, is to truly think about, well, what's your why?
Right.
There's a book, I don't recall the name of the author, but he talks about what is your why and always starting out with the why and really making sure that you are connecting whatever it is you're wanting to roll out, whatever it is you're wanting to do with, tell people why you want to do it. But I also think the other part of that is, what does the audience need to hear from you? And really put yourself in their shoes so that as you bring those messages, you are connecting with them, your message is landing on them, and it makes sense to them. And you're not just speaking just to speak.
Yeah. Oh, so good. That is often what I speak to when I'm either coaching or speaking or facilitating a workshop. The importance of really studying your audience. And you said it, putting yourself in their shoes, asking yourself, what do they care about? What are they interested in? What do they need? And what do they want? Because obviously they know what they want and they focus on the want. And yes, we want to give them what they need, but we got to give it with a side of what they want. That's how it's going to resonate and land for them. And so I'm so excited that you're saying all that. And coming back to starting with why, I think you are referring to Simon Sinek. Love his book.
Is that him?
Yes. And I'm so glad you brought it up. I will link in the show notes to the book. I'll also link to Lenetr's book, so make sure to check them out. It's really a great book when you say start with why. Why are you speaking? Why are you delivering this message? Why are you standing in front of that group of people? Or why are you having this conversation? Really being clear before we deliver that message. We know why we are doing it. But because so many times people just talk. It's so easy to talk, right? But it's not that easy to deliver a message that lands for people.
Right. Exactly.
So I'm so glad you said that. So how do you balance the need for clear and concise communication with the importance of fostering an inclusive and diverse work environment?
So clear communication that is concise is critically important. And we have lots of C's there in that last phrase. But I feel that that's so important because as leaders, people look to us for the messages. They look to us for the vision. They look to us for the strategy. And people are relying on us to be able to share what's the direction, where are we going, what do we need to do. And it's important that you as a leader are delivering a really clear, a really concise message so that you know, well, what is it that I'm expected to do? What are my next steps? And you don't necessarily as a leader have to tell them how to do it, but you do have to give people a broad brush stroke in terms of what is that vision? What are the expectations? What are the goals? What are the areas that people need to hit so that they know what they have to work toward? One of the things that I would often say when I was in the corporate space was, as a leader, it's up to you to really be that visionary and to set very clear expectations for your team so that your team knows what to expect from you, so that your team knows what are the goals that we have to achieve, whether that's on an annual basis, whether that's on a quarterly basis, or however the organization decides to, mete out what it is that they are expecting from their teams on a day-to-day basis. But you as the leader have to really set that strategy in that direction for your team so that they know, here's where I need to go. And then you let them go off and you let them figure it out and bring you the solutions back. I do think that that's very important. And I think as we're talking about being an inclusive leader and building inclusive environments, is as a leader, you have to meet people where they are.
Yes.
And I think especially now, there are multiple generations in the workplace. I think we're up to 5 different generations in the workplace.
Yep.
And everyone learns very differently. Everyone takes in information very differently. So it's up to you as the leader to really figure out who is on my team. How do they learn as adult learners? How are they receiving information so that you can give them the tools and the resources that they need so that they can drive to execution? That's your number one job as a leader, is really, again, setting that vision, setting that strategy, giving direction to your team, really creating that culture of setting those expectations for people so that they know where to go. And then you have to let them go and do that. But you also have to figure out how to adjust your leadership and how to adjust your communication style so that you are bringing in multiple different people who may have different learning styles, who may have different communication styles, people who may have various challenges that they're dealing with, and it requires you to be an adaptive leader. And I think oftentimes, I know for me personally, I had to learn this the hard way. I often thought, well, people need to adjust to me. I'm the boss. I'm the leader. And that's not always the case. It should be that two-way street. But particularly, I think the onus is on you as a leader to adjust your style to the people who are around you so that you can be a more effective leader, so that you can be a more approachable leader, so that you can be a high-performance leader that is truly, again, setting that direction, setting that strategy, and then leading your team to success.
This is fantastic. As I'm listening to you, I wondered, how do you approach a leader who's resistant to adapting their communication style, who's definitely still thinking, I'm the leader, I'm the boss, they have to adapt to me, I'm speaking, they listen, and they do. How do you deal with that situation?
That's someone who is very, I would say, old school, or someone who just doesn't want to come to the modern way of leadership. And when you think about people who are truly transformational leaders, people who know how to engage, people who know how to connect with their team, and people who are truly driving them to success, those individuals who feel like, I'm going to be so rigid and so stoic and so, back in the day in terms of my leadership approach, they're probably not very successful, right? Because the way that we work today, which is very different than when I graduated from graduate school and I felt like I knew everything and I knew how to be the best leader. Workplaces are so very different. And what our staffs are requiring of us is very different than even the things that we learned when we were in graduate school.
So true.
So you as a leader, you have to be able to adjust. You have to be able to adapt to that, because otherwise you're not going to have people following you if you're not. Right?
Yeah.
Like if you feel like you're the one who can make all the decisions and you're, going to be a dictator and you're just going to be super rigid, then you're probably not going to have a very successful team of people around you, because nobody is going to want to work with you.
So very true. It's so inspiring to hear you say that, because it is clear that we are able to adapt if we are willing to at least just try it.
Right. You got to be willing to. And I think that you hit the nail on the head. You have to be willing to do that, right? You have to have that desire to, again, be the best leader. But that takes self-awareness, right? That takes that awareness of, what do I need to do to be a transformational leader? What do I need to do to be a truly impactful leader? What do I need to do to communicate with impact so that people will listen and so that people will follow?
Yes.
And that takes a lot of reflection and even introspection.
Amen to that. You often speak on the importance of career advocates, mentors, and sponsors being crucial to career advancement. I would love to unpack that a little bit with you. How do advocates, mentors, and sponsors differ in their approach to support career growth? And what unique perspectives or opportunities does each bring to the table? And how can my listeners who are leaders and aspiring leaders, how can they leverage each of these types of relationships effectively?
So I'm so glad that you asked me about this, because this is one of my favorite topics.
I know.
One of my absolute favorite topics. So let me just start off by kind of level setting what the differences are. So let's start out with mentors, because mentors tends to be the easiest topic. And usually most people know what mentors are.
Right.
So mentors are people who give you advice. They give you guidance. They give you wisdom. And they're really people who have walked a mile in your shoes. They're probably someone that you admire. They've got leadership traits or characteristics that you've said, okay, this is a person that I want to learn something from him or her. And a mentor can help you on a project. Maybe you need brainstorming on something that you're working with. Maybe you're dealing with workplace issues or conflict, or dealing with an issue with your boss. So mentors can really be someone who can help support you and give you that guidance and advice that you need. And I think the important thing about mentors is you can have a number of mentors. You can have one mentor, you can have 101 mentors. There's really no, shortage in terms of people who are available to help support you. So that's what mentors are. On the other hand, sponsors are people who are more senior than you. So if you think about where you are in the organization, sponsors are people who are going to be powerful, they're influential, and they're typically people who are sitting at the senior level of the company, and they have influence. They are the ones who are the decision makers when it's time to have conversations about who's ready for opportunities, who's ready to advance in the organization. They're talking about performance. They're talking about succession planning and some of those things. And sponsors are people who will lend their relationship capital to help advocate on your behalf. And I say relationship capital because that is so important in terms of sponsors, because in the workplace, you have your performance capital, which is the way that you're doing your job, right? You're hired to do a job. So your performance capital is your output. But you also have relationship capital. And so sponsors are important in that they are lending you their credibility, their reputation with their peers, their relationship capital to help you advance in the organization. So that's the other bucket. Then I would say that third bucket is really advocates. And advocates are people who could be they could be a mentor, they could be a sponsor, or it could be someone else. So as you think about an advocate, it's really someone who may not be at the senior leader level, but they're someone who's worked closely with you, whether it's on a project or on a team or on a committee, and they can advocate on your behalf. They're your ambassador. They're your part of your fan club. They can talk about your work when you're not around. And when you think about the dynamics of the workplace, again, especially now, research has shown that you need people who can sponsor you, because your performance often is not going to be enough. And I was one of these people who believe that, you know what, I'm smart. I show up early. I stay late. I raise my hand for opportunities. I help with the volunteer assignments. I do all of the things. And that's going to be enough for somebody to notice me. In a lot of places, everybody's doing that. And that's not for people to notice you. And what really is going to be your ticket for you to accelerate your career is for you having a senior leader sponsor who's saying, you know what? Sally is someone who shows up. She drives to execution. She has energy. She has enthusiasm. She's able to get it all done. She's someone that I want on my team. And you have to have people who have that influence in the organization who can call your name out in a room full of opportunities. That's how people are able to advance their careers, because your performance is not going to be enough. Your performance, your degrees, your certifications, your experiences are all good, but sometimes it's just not going to be enough for you to be able to advance your career and have tremendous success, especially as a leader. And then not only especially as a leader, but if you are from an underrepresented population, if you're in a male-dominated industry, if you're from a marginalized community, you absolutely have to have people who are willing to talk about your competencies, your capabilities, your skills, and they can advocate on your behalf.
So many good things. I love the clarity that you really just separated those three. And thank you for saying that you could have one or 101 mentors. So important for leaders and aspiring leaders to really get that. I will be sending my leadership coaching women to this episode and say, go check out Lenetr, because it is so crucial to understand that simply doing the work, simply being the best and raising your hand, that's not enough.
That's not enough.
It's not enough that your work will speak for itself, because often that's what we think. If I do everything, I keep my head down, I raise my hand, I volunteer, I should theoretically be promoted, but it's not happening.
Right. And that's not usually, it's not just one or two industries. There's multiple research pieces that are out there. One of the most popular ones that I could point your audience to is the McKinsey and Lean In collaboration that they do every year.
I love that
Women in Work.
Yes.
And the Women in the Workplace report, they talk a lot about what are some of the barriers, what are some of the challenges, what are some of the headwinds that women especially are facing in corporate environments, and what are those challenges that women especially tend to face at every rung of the ladder. And so when you think about all the different steps that people have to go through from, frontline leadership or that first level of being a manager, then going to higher level leadership, then getting into the executive ranks, there are lots of challenges. There are lots of barriers. And that's where sponsors can really come in to say, you know what, we need to reach down into the organization to help more junior level talent be able to get noticed and get the opportunities. And one of the things that I often share this with audiences is that, we tend to choose our mentors, right? But often sponsors choose us.
Yes.
So that's the clear distinction that I'd like to make for your audience, is that typically you're not going to go up to a senior level executive and ask that person, hey, would you be my sponsor? Sometimes that happens, but most of the time, sponsors, because of where they sit in the organization, they have to know you, they have to like you, they have to trust you, right? Because they're advocating on your behalf. So as you're thinking about who could be a potential sponsor for me, think about, what do I need to do to get noticed, right? You're out there asking for a mentor, but usually someone is going to see you and they say, hey, that's a person that we need to keep our eye on. That's a person that we need to have on our radar screen. And that's usually, not always, but that's usually how it works in terms of mentors and sponsors. And it's often been said that women are over mentored and under sponsored.
Thank you. I was about to get into that because I often work within the tech environment. Many of my clients are within the tech environment. So I'm facilitating workshops and coaching. And I often will have an instance where one of my coaching clients, female, for example, she's in marketing, but she works with a lot of engineers, with a lot of product specialists and analysts. And she'll often they'll just glance over her. Promotion is coming up and they're thinking, well, we want somebody who's a leader. So we're going to go with an engineer or with a product specialist or with an analyst. And she's right there. How does that woman who has the expertise and the drive, who's doing all the right things, how does she get noticed?
Yeah, you know what? This is, what I like to call a sticky witch. There are a few things that I feel like are important in terms of how do you get noticed. And the easiest way that I can put this kind of in a framework for your audience is to kind of share it in this ABCD format.
Okay.
So A is you have to articulate your value add. Articulate your value add. And what do I mean when I say that? Every organization, every industry has crucial metrics that their organization is advancing from one year to the next. So it's important that as you're working on projects and as you're taking on committee assignments, that you're able to keep a job diary, that you're able to talk about your accomplishments and how you are accomplishing things around the value added priorities for your organization. So it's not enough for you to do the work. You also have to talk about, well, here's the work that I did, right? So it's a little bit of an element of self-promotion, which again, as women, we're often taught not to talk about ourselves. We're often
Absolutely.
taught to just keep our head down, to do the work, but you don't talk about your accomplishments. Whereas Joe is always talking about his accomplishments.
Yes.
Get Joe to stop talking about it. So that's the first thing is, just being able to articulate your value add around things that are important to the organization. Be brand intentional. And what do I mean by that? Brand intentionality is managing your personal brand. And everyone has a personal brand. So what I would say to people is you want to lead with your brand. And whether or not you're intentional with leading with your brand is leading you. And that means is how you show up, is how you drive to execution, is whether or not you have energy, is whether or not you have that enthusiasm. And people notice people who have a strong personal brand. So whatever it is that you desire to be known for, whatever it is that you are a subject matter expert around, you want to think about, how do I show up? What am I known for? How do I differentiate myself in the department, in the division, in the company? And that's what you lead with, right? So it's being intentional. It's thinking about, how do I focus on my personal brand? How do I focus on my leadership brand? The next area I would say is C, and it's cultivating your own relationship capital. So you heard me talk a lot about relationship capital and how sponsors will lend their relationship capital.
Yeah.
Well, for you, no matter who you are, no matter what level of the company you're in, you need to network. You need to network, build engaging relationships with people up, down, across. And when I say up, I mean your boss, your boss's boss, across, people who are in multiple departments in the organization, down, your direct reports, if you're a leader in the organization. And even if you're an individual contributor, you really need to think about, well, how am I cultivating relationships with people across the organization? Because relationships are what make the workplace go around, right? No matter how great your work is, you've got to have relationships with people. People have to enjoy working with you. They have to be able to be an advocate. They have to be an ambassador. They need to be a fan of yours. And in order for that to happen, you've got to cultivate those relationships with people so that they know that you exist. And then the last thing that I would say is letter D, and that is driving results. Like there is no job that you can do, especially if you're trying to be a leader, where you're not driving results, right? So it's incumbent on you to really understand, what are the metrics? What is the dashboard? What's the reports? What's the things that's keeping my leaders up at night? And how am I driving results around those critical metrics? And when you're able to do that, and you're able to really have a demonstrated track record of success over time around those metrics, that's how you're starting to get noticed. So you see there's a trend between that framework that I shared in terms of knowing what's important to your boss, your boss's boss, your senior leaders, being able to build your relationship capital, and being able to talk about your accomplishments and doing all of those things very intentionally to where people know this person has a brand for A, B, C, D. This person is a good strategic planner. This person is exceptional when it comes to project management or whatever the competency may be. But those are just a few key things that I would say, if you're focusing on doing those 4 things, I can't guarantee that you're going to get a sponsor to tap you on the shoulder tomorrow. I can assure you, not everyone knows those strategies. And I'm sharing those strategies from not a book, but my 15 years of being a senior level executive. And those are things that are important to senior level executives. Those individuals who know what is keeping the leaders up at night, who are driving those results, who are driving metrics, people who have really good relationships, people who are able to execute and get projects across the finish line, people have those good working relationships. I mean, those are all things that senior leaders look out for. And those are a few areas that could help you get noticed by senior level sponsors in your organization.
How do you cultivate relationships though with your boss? You might think, oh, it's easy. I get to see the person at least at some point, hopefully. But how do you cultivate a relationship with your boss's boss or their boss to get that visibility that you probably need to really gain that relationship capital?
So here's a few key things. And this is something that I wish I figured out earlier in my career. One is you definitely need to have a really, really positive, strong relationship with your boss, right? And it is not brown nosing if you are developing a good relationship with your boss. You know, a lot of times people would say, oh, you're just a brown noser, you're just trying to keep up, and you're trying to do all these things. Like, throw all of that out the window, because your boss can be your biggest advocate or can make your life a living HELL.
Amen.
Right?
Yes.
So that is probably the number one, most important relationship you have at the company. And utilize your boss to build relationships with higher level leaders. And what I mean by that is you want to have a transparent conversation with your leader and say, hey, I would love to build a relationship with Joseph. I seem to like the name Joseph. I really want to build a relationship with Joseph or build a relationship with Sally. Can you give me some recommendations on how I can do that? So your boss should really be that go-between. I would definitely not recommend going around your boss and blindsiding your boss by email his boss or her boss and saying, hey, I want to meet with you. Because as you can imagine, that will probably create some challenges for you that you don't really want to deal with. And it's going to backfire in terms of you building that relationship capital. So you want to utilize your one-up leader in terms of helping you to figure out, how do I get visibility with your leader? How do I get visibility with leaders 2 and 3 levels above you? And again, you want to have those conversations with your boss and utilize that person to help you do that. The other thing I would say is, and you know, I used to be surprised at this sometimes. If you want to have these conversations, be really good at the job you're doing today.
Amen.
So you're not executing in the job you're doing today, right? And executing doesn't just mean being a mediocre performer. That means you are a high performer. You are scoring exceptionally on performance evaluations, and you're delivering where the organization needs you to deliver today. And if you're not doing that, you probably shouldn't be having conversations about how to meet with my boss and my boss's boss and my boss's boss's boss. So, you know, that's just something I want to throw out in terms of really having that awareness, having that self-awareness that, am I doing all the things that I need to do today? Am I focusing on the right things today in order for my boss to be an advocate for me with his boss, in order for my boss to be an advocate for me with her boss or with her peers or with her colleagues? And so you've got to really think about it from that perspective. Are you delivering the type of product and the type of work that your bosses and your boss's boss want to advocate for?
Wow. I have to make sure I catch that. That is so well said. And you said it without hesitation. So it's really clear. If you are not a top performer, you should probably not be having any of those conversations. And I can think of a few people who have, let's call it, a different opinion of their own work. And what you need there is a bit of a reality check and some feedback and saying, hey, how am I performing, instead of only or solely going on your own feedback. I guess it's just creating that self-awareness.
Absolutely. I think that self-awareness is so important, and that feedback is the other piece, and not just feedback from your leader, you know, getting 360-degree feedback from people that you work with, people who are below you in terms of your direct reports, people who are in higher levels than you, or even individuals who are other major stakeholders in the organization. So I wish I knew about 360-degree tools earlier in my career and really utilize that. But you definitely want to be self-aware. You want to ask for feedback, even if people are not giving it to you. And I wouldn't wait until your performance evaluation to ask for feedback. I would ask for that feedback throughout the year so that you're constantly in the mode of asking for the feedback and then being able to focus on, well, what is this feedback? And being a person who's coachable, being a person who can receive feedback and actually do something about it without being negative, without being very defensive, and without being, just overly, critical of the feedback that you've been given. Because, a lot of us think highly of ourselves, and we should, right? If we don't think highly of ourselves, no one else.
Correct.
But I also feel like tempering that with, well, what are some areas of opportunity that we have? And we all have them because we can never be experts in every single area. So it's really, just taking into account, well, what are those things that we may need to grow in and really listening to that feedback and taking it to heart.
Yes. I always tell my coaching clients, you want to have your cheerleaders, the people who believe in you, even when you don't believe in yourself, in yourself yet. But you also want to have the people who will tell it to you straight. You need someone who will tell you, you messed up there, you missed an opportunity. And they do it in a kind way where they still show you grace, but they don't let you get away with something that could have been better or that could have been different. So I'm so glad you're saying that. You mentioned 360 tools that we can use. How often would you say, or would you recommend a leader or aspiring leader gets that kind of feedback?
I would say if you're asking for feedback, I would ask for feedback a couple of times a year at least. And I would think about the cadence of when you're working on projects. Let's say if you just finished a huge rollout or a huge corporate-wide implementation, you might want to ask for some feedback after that, right? Just to get a sense of, well, how did this project go? Or if you're on a committee or you're doing something else and you get a major deliverable completed, you might want, I wouldn't ask for it too often, but if you are truly getting some of that 360 feedback, it's okay to ask for different people at different times of the year, just to be sure that hey, what's going on? What am I doing well? What could I be doing to improve? Just couple that with the feedback that you're getting on your performance evaluation. I would say if you're utilizing a more formal tool, like a 360 or something else like that, you probably don't need to ask for that feedback just because it's very time intensive. You want to think about the resources that the organization has to put together in order for you to get a 360. So I wouldn't ask for that kind of feedback that often on a formal tool.
Thank you. That's fantastic. That's really helpful. Something that I want to leave my listeners with before I let you go and you tell them a little bit about what you're up to. How can leaders cultivate a diverse network of mentors and sponsors to ensure inclusivity and equity in career opportunities? What steps can they take to address, for example, biases or systemic barriers that may block certain individuals, like people who are in underrepresented populations, from accessing these support systems?
The number one thing that I would say is seek mentors and seek relationships with different kinds of people. Instead of having a network only with people who look like you, only with people in your department, you really want to build a strong network of mentors and people who could turn into sponsors by just choosing people who are, at different levels, people who are at different departments. If you're someone who likes to hunt, maybe find an affinity with someone in the organization who likes to golf. So think about, as much as we are similar, we have so many different activities and hobbies and things that make us who we are, right? So I would say seek out those people who are different than you and be very intentional with building and cultivating your network with people at different levels of the organization. So don't just, shoot to only build relationships with people who are senior VPs or VPs or even directors. You want to build and cultivate a network of people who are at multiple levels of the organization in different departments of the organization. You also want to do that both internally as well as externally, So I would say you want to think about, what is your brand in your community? Are you focusing on volunteer opportunities? Are you involved in professional associations?
Mhm.
So all of those organizations and community trustee opportunities are really good places for you to kind of build your brand,
Mhm.
make a name for yourself, build those relationships, because we're so transient as a workforce.
Mm.
You know, you might meet someone one day and then 2 weeks later they're in another completely different organization.
Yeah.
So that's why I think it's important to build those relationships both internally
Mhm.
as well as externally. And you want to think about people who are key decision makers in the organization, who are advancing goals like equity and equality and justice and diversity and inclusion and belonging and all of those things.
Mm.
You want to think about people who are in your network who can truly be good advocates, and people that you see internally who are advocating for those things, people who are, you know, the champions for your employees groups, and the people who are your champions for your affinity groups in the organization. And also outside of the organization, you know, how active are you in the community? How active are you in mission-based causes like Heart Association or March of Dimes or, you know, anything like that? I mean, there's no shortage of causes that are out there. And those are tremendous opportunities for you too, to, again, volunteer, you know, show what you can do and build those connections while you're advocating for something that's important to you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm looking at the time and I cannot believe how time just flew by.
So fast.
So many golden nuggets that you shared with my listeners today. I am so very grateful. And I think you and I will have to have another appointment and get you back on the show, because
yes,
yes, excellent. I'm so glad, because I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I want to dive deeper into different topics on feedback and, you know, all the different things. But I know I have got to let you go. So please tell my audience where they can find you online and what are you currently working on?
Yes. So where you can find me online, the easiest place is going to LinkedIn. So if you go to LinkedIn and look up Lenetr King, Lenetra, King, King, you'll definitely find me there. So I'm visible on LinkedIn. Also, go to my website for my company, www.watchmeexcel.com. You can also find me on my company Facebook page, my company Instagram page, and also I have a personal Instagram under Lenetr King. So if you look up my company, Watch Me Excel, also my book has its own website, so unwritteninsights.com. You can also find me there and reach out to me. So I would love to be able to connect with you all, would love to hear from you. Let us know what you thought about this podcast episode. Yes. That's how folks can reach out to me.
Lenetr, thank you so much. I will link to all your goodies in the show notes.
Please.
So that my listeners can find you. I hope they get to work with you because you are an incredible human being. The few conversations you and I have had, I've enjoyed immensely. And I look forward to a part 2 on the podcast where we dive into a different topic and have you share your incredible knowledge and insights. Thank you so much for making the time for Communicate to Lead. We appreciate you and we look forward to seeing what you do next in your business and your speaking and your executive coaching. I'm excited.
Yes, well, I'm super excited. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity. It has been great seeing you and just talking to you about all the things that are important in terms of leadership and the workplace. So cannot wait for part 2.
Me too. Thank you and have a wonderful day. You might not be able to see me, but I am positively glowing because what an incredible conversation with Lenetr King from Watch Me Excel. Lenetr brought her insights, she brought her expertise, she shared her knowledge with us. And I'm so excited because she shared not only about her journey as a former C-suite executive, but why it's important to have mentors. And having more than one mentor is a big plus. Make sure you have a few people in your pocket who you are building a relationship with. They're giving you advice and you are adding value to your lives. Why it's important to have advocates and sponsors, and how we go about cultivating those relationships. So many of us focus on our expertise and the work that we're doing. And I know for myself, I tend to network less than I probably should. So if you are anything like me, I encourage you, I strongly implore you to start networking with the people around you. Not only your department, not only your company, go with different parts of society. You never know who you meet and what can happen, where that relationship can take you. So I encourage you to dive into this episode again. If you missed anything, you can always come back to it, take some notes, take some action, and you don't have to take all the action. You don't have to go out and decide, okay, I'm going to look for a mentor, a sponsor, and an advocate. Start with one. And once you've cultivated those relationships, once you have that going, then move on to the next thing. Then make sure to have a great relationship with your leader so that they can recommend you to other people. The next time when a position opens up or when a project needs a new leader, who knows? They might be offering you that position. So keep raising your hand, keep doing the incredible work that you're doing, and keep being the leader that you want to be. Because as you are watching other leaders who are inspiring you, you are probably just as likely inspiring other leaders to be even better leaders. I will link in the show notes to Lenetr's social media links, her website. I'll also link to her book, Unwritten Insights, a career playbook for leaders of color. Go check them out. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been wonderful being part of this conversation, and keep leading. Don't let anybody stop you from being the leader you know you want to be and you can be. So just keep pushing. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please leave me a rating and leave me a review and let us know what resonated with you. And let us know, if I have Lenetr back on the show for a part 2, what questions do you have? She's an expert. Why not tap into her knowledge? Thank you so much. I will see you in 2 weeks.